Yes, well, I was at St Pat's College the late 60s, early 70s, so it's a long time ago now, but a great period of my life. So I went on from there to study in Ballarat, study at what was then the Ballarat Institute of Advanced Education, now Federation Uni. Did a business course there and a teaching course, and then taught in Ballarat, so I was very much Ballarat. So I was a day student at a time when we had a lot of boarders actually. I think boarders have just come back to St Pat's again, which is great. So yeah, I was very Ballarat, and my family go back in Ballarat to the 1890s when my mother's side settled there, so it was very much a part of my life, and St Pat's was very much a part of my life. But what am I doing now? So you know, post-politics, post-being Premier, I'm now a range of portfolios. I'm Chancellor of a university, Victoria University, the University of Melbourne's West. I'm chair of a law firm, Morris Blackburn Lawyers, a litigation company in the country. I'm now, for the Australian government, they asked me to be an envoy in Timor-Leste, which I am, with responsibility for the Greater Sunrise gas field to try and resolve that issue. So that's a current, quite intensive role I'm doing now. So a range of activities, which is what I've done since I left as Premier, largely. Yes, I did. I mean, what it really told me was that credentials are important, and attaining Year 12 or equivalent education is a ticket for life. It's something that you can go on with. And I really wanted to give that opportunity to as many Victorians as possible. And when I came to office, our retention rate to Year 12 or equivalent was one of the lowest in the country. It was something like the high 60s, 70%. The ambition I had for the state was to lift that to around 90% of young people, of students in Year 12 or equivalent going to Year 12, and then hopefully going on to other education as well. So we set about it in a comprehensive way to reconfigure the whole of the education system to achieve that task. And it was one of the sort of key early markers I had for our government that we wanted to do it. Very pleased that we're able to achieve that within about 3 or 4 years, which is good. Having a highly educated state, a state where skills are very important, was going to be an important part of the future for our state, and that's proved to be the case. Well, it was as much about what we found ourselves inheriting in 1999. We had a school system in which schools were closed, not opening. We had lack of investment in refurbishing. And so we really knew we had a task ahead of ourselves. So I had to marshal as much resources and support I could get out of our budget to do that task, to have, you know, state-of-the-art schools developed around the country. Not only that, but actually it's relevant for St Patrick's College as well. I think we were the first government in Victoria to fund capital works for the non-government system as well. So I can remember having a discussion with the then head of the Catholic Education Office, Tom Doyle, and Tom was sort of urging that we did have a program, and we did, and so we were able to fund non-government Catholic schools for refurbishments as well, which is a good thing, because really, you know, almost half of the young people in Victoria were in non-government schools, Catholic schools, so it was important that they had the great opportunities as well. So, so your question was how important it was. It was very important for what we saw in the state. I've already mentioned about retention rates to Year 12. We had another program to look at students dropping out in the middle years to try and keep them in. The differential between country and city, we had a lower participation education from country to city. So all that was sort of part of our reform. And building new schools, refurbishing schools, giving more opportunities for people in both the state and non-government system was a really important part of what we stood for. Well, mental health is everything now, but it wasn't such a big issue when I was in government, 15, 20 years ago. But it was important. It was emerging as an issue. We had a very high youth suicide rate. We had the move, it's hard to imagine now, but we had large psychiatric institutions, and we wanted to move people out of those psychiatric institutions into home-based, community-based care and independent living arrangements in the future. So it was a big effort to try and get on top of mental health issues, and it was just one of those things we need to tackle. Well, it is the mission, really, of the Edmund Rice mission, and advancement through education effectively is the mission. And I think by engagement with students and looking at the total pastoral care of the student, I think that's what the Catholic system can do better, what St Pat's can do better. And looking for the totality of health of young people going through the education system is important. And I think schools are well placed to do that better, and I think that's where we need to have the investment.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, one of my passions since leaving office has been support for the new emerging nation of Timor-Leste. On our closest neighbour on our doorstep, and of course I went through 374 years of Portuguese colonial rule, 28 years of Indonesian colonial rule, in which a quarter of their population was either killed or died of starvation. Eventually were liberated, eventually had an independent country, but there's such a task ahead really for that country to become successful. So I involved myself in Timor-Leste, and I have ever since I left. Whether it's the Ballarat house, the location where the 5 Australian journalists were killed in 1975 when Indonesia invaded Timor-Leste's shores, and we set about in Ballarat to the very house, the Australia House where those journalists were killed, to acquire it, to purchase it, to develop it as a community centre, to have it as a resource for that community. We've done accommodation in the old Portuguese fort now for a hotel, and a new dental clinic, a whole range of things. So really that's part of it. And I've had a lot of other issues with Timor-Leste, including being an advisor to Prime Minister Janana Guzmão, who's now back in power again, and assisting him on governance, which I've done for the last 10 or so years. So yeah, I've had an involvement there. Burnett Institute, of course, that was an extension of the work we did with biomedicine, biosciences when I was in government, and it's one of the great strengths of Victoria that we have such a strong bioscience community. Some great discoveries from the flu vaccine Relenza to the Bonigear, which was discovered and developed in Victoria, and there's a great future here, and the Burnett was all about that. And Hadassah, I don't know why I got involved in Hadassah, but that was, I think when I was Premier, I visited the trauma hospital in Israel and then set up an association with our trauma hospital, the Alfred, and so I had an association ever since in that, that sort of joined up health experience between the two places. So yeah, these are just some of the things that I want to involve myself in. Well, you're hoping I'm going to say St Pat's College, aren't you? And I suppose it partly did, really. I say I'm culturally Catholic, and everything that means, and that's probably the values that I have really are the values I learned and gained by being at St Pat's, but also from my family and my community. I was very grounded in Ballarat. My father was a sort of a key business person associated with a lot of community events in Ballarat, and sort of those values that he had, I gained as well. But I think around me also in Ballarat, Ballarat was extremely formative for me because it was where I got involved. So I got involved post St Pat's College, and about the time that I was at university, I got involved in student politics, and then I got involved in community activity in Ballarat. Australian Labor Party, I joined, the environment movement, the movement against uranium mining, the Friends of the Earth. I was involved in all those and chaired all those, and eventually became significant in them. And I saw around me in Ballarat injustices which I thought I wanted to fix. You know, when I looked around Ballarat, you could see that at that time, it's hard to imagine now, this is like a different world than I grew up, that every part of Ballarat was governed or overseen by the conservative side of politics, whether that was a water board, whether that was the council, whether it was the hospital board, whether it was state, federal, local politics. And I thought that was unfair, and I wanted to change it. So I set about to change it. That's really what I got involved in. And so it was happening then. Happening a bit in the latter years at St Pat's, I guess, that political, social awareness. But happened much more when I got to university, and that's really when I got involved. But it must have been happening at St Pat's at that time, because I can remember, and for all the students looking at this now, they'd be hard to imagine, but when I did high school certificate, now VCE in year 12, you couldn't do Australian political studies. It wasn't a subject which was done at St Pat's. So I had to do it by external studies, supported by one of the brothers, and there was about 5 or 6 of us who did that. And I guess I had that interest, so that interest was arising in me about that time. So it was happening in that later period in year 12, I guess, and then went on. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and it was like a general activities where, I don't know if it happens anymore, where you could choose to do certain activities, and I did, one of them was debating, and we did that. And I did that, so yes, I was sort of emerging, right, probably, and you know, testing my skills. You know, I'd always been good at MC, comparing, chairing, that's the sort of skill I had, and I guess that developed as part of the sort of interest I had in debating, which we had at St Pat's. So I hope they've still got it, you know, but it was a great activity that we had then. So yeah, it was starting then. Get involved in activities, get involved in your community. And in getting involved, make sure you work with people of a common view and a common aim in order to get things done. And I think that's the key really for those people who are interested. And nothing beats community involvement, and I think that's the key. And I think, and secondly, I mean, my advice would be, don't put all your eggs in one basket and thinking that somehow you're going to be a politician by just, you know, being involved and having that ambition. Also have a separate work stream, a career stream going on, and do your politics additionally outside that, because you never know where these things go, and make sure you've got some options. Yeah, look, I've always been welcomed. I wasn't the model student, by the way, you know. I was a bit of a rebel in my year 12 years, about that period, I think, you know. So, but nevertheless, it was an important part of my growing up, I guess. My always feeling welcome, I think, was probably how I'd put it. And so that's always made me feel welcome and a part of the community. I didn't always agree with everything St Pat's did, but nevertheless, they could understand and accept that I was someone who was going to go on, I guess, and they nurtured and developed that in me. I think so, and you see, I was a day student, and there was there was quite a bit of separation between day students. They called us the day rats and boarders at the time, and so the answer is yes, but it was as much other students at St Pat's who I were friends with, who were also in my community in Ballarat. And so I've got enduring friendships and associations with people in Ballarat who went to St Pat's. So it was as much about Ballarat as it was about St Pat's. Probably the English teacher at the time, who was a very, very long-term teacher, Peter Farley. We used to call him Jake, I think was his name. He didn't mind being called Jake, actually. He was a motivator from my point of view. I can still remember Shakespeare coming alive in English classes when we did Merchant of Venice or Julius Caesar. He was brilliant at that. He was a great motivating teacher from that point of view, and I still remember him. And I think a lot of students who went through in the years I went through would remember him as well, but he's one. What lessons did I take away? Follow your passions would be the lessons that I'd take away. You know, I made some deliberative choices that I wanted to do things. I mentioned already that, you know, I wanted to pursue politics, so I did Australian political studies in Year 12. And even though it wasn't available at St Pat's, I pursued it and they made it available for me. So I think follow your passions, follow your beliefs, and if you do that, I think the education will follow you.
What don't you miss about St Patrick's College?
What don't I miss? I don't miss, it's not there now, I don't miss the fact that in Year 9 and 10 that cadets were compulsory and we had to march in the parade ground. And the only way you get out of that as a day student is if you were a bus student and you had to go on the buses. Don't miss that. I don't miss the size of the school. It was a big school, probably too big. It's still big, isn't it? And you know, those enormous assemblies with Brother Stewart or Brother Stellard, the principals who were there at the time I was there, where you could hear a pin drop, and you know, the sort of enormous assembly events. I don't miss that. And I don't miss, at my time, I guess it was a period in which there was more discipline. I don't miss the fact that corporal punishment has gone. I think that was a good thing to go. I think it was pretty average at the time. In fact, I was the Premier that abolished corporal punishment in Victoria. I think solidarity is a good one, and sticking together for a common cause. I think that's an important and enduring feature of St Pat's, and I think that's a good one. I think dignity is a really important one. I agree with that. And you didn't mention it, but I think your ticket to life through educational advancement, which is really what Edmund Rice was about. I think that was a really important one. And the upward mobility it gave you from education opportunity. I think that's really important, and I hope that's never lost to St Pat's in the future. I don't have many connections. I go back occasionally for events. I went back for the 50 year, showing my age, reunion recently, and that was great. I visited 2 or 3 times when I was Premier, obviously, and once or twice since then as well. But probably more enduring relationship with the students I went to St Pat's with. You know, the people like Stephen McCardle, who was a friend of mine, who an accountant in Ballarat, Graham Cornups, the people I was with, but they were all Ballarat people, and they're the ones I have most association with. Yeah, I think it needs to be more than just reunions. You know, I think I've been to 2 reunions, one 20 year, one 50 year, and I love the 50 year one. I wasn't so enamoured by the 20 year one. But I think St Pat's could, at certain events and activities that they have, invite people back. You know, invite some of the students back that were there at the time. Around an event or activity. It might be a sporting event, it might be a cultural event, something that's happening at St Pat's, you know, and that's probably a good way to get people back. Well, 130 years, so it's probably not the oldest Catholic institution in Victoria. I think Sacred Heart College is probably older. In fact, Sacred Heart College, the Mercy Nuns, in 1854 harboured Peter Lawler after the Eureka Rebellion and his surgery on his arm. They got a doctor in to fix that. So they've been around a long time, the Mercy Nuns, is my guess.
Portland.
And which one?
Portland. All Saints Down.
Portland's older too.
He's the oldest.
Yeah, because it's an old, yeah, that'd make sense. That makes sense. Very early, lot of early settlement of Catholics at Port Fairy and Portland, yeah. So it's old, but it's still old. Why is it important? Well, it's an important choice that people of Ballarat should have, really. They should have the choice of going to a state system, going to a Catholic system, and of the Catholic system, this is a good choice to make, really, of brothers, and now I suppose there's not many brothers there anymore, and a school which has the Edmund Rice history, the mission that Edmund Rice has given the school, educational advancement and liberty through education. I think that's really important, and important to keep that heritage for the future.
Not asked.
Yes, well, I'm not a practising Catholic. I'm in the majority of the Catholic community. I'm a lapsed Catholic, and I think that's the majority of those who. But I'm culturally Catholic. I say that's the values I have are Catholic values. What would I say about faith? I think it's important to believe in something, and I think if that is the Catholic faith, then that's important, but it's equally important that you find your way and your set of beliefs which work for you. And I think that's really important for the future. I think one of the most important things is to be frank and open with your peers, with your colleagues, with your other students, and to make sure you share things. That's really important. Academic achievement, yeah, that's really important, but being together with other students and bonding and working together, that's the most important thing that's going to stand you in good stead for the future as well. But, you know, sport's important, really important, but I think the diversity of sport is important as well. If there's one message that I'd have, don't concentrate everything around football and cricket or even athletics. Look at the broad spread of sport, and I think that's really important. And if I had one wish for St Pat's, it was that in my time they had more diversity. I'm sure they have now, but I think that's really important.